Wars are not won only by brave soldiers or powerful weapons. In fact, the most important factor in almost every modern war has been supplies. The steady flow of fuel, food, ammunition, spare parts, and medicine to the soldiers who need them. Without this flow, even the strongest army in the world will stop working within days. This is the central idea needed to understand what is happening between Iran and Israel in 2026. While the news focuses on missiles being fired and drones being shot down, something quieter and more dangerous is taking place. Iran appears to be carefully preparing to cut off Israel's supply lines, and if it succeeds, the consequences could be devastating. To understand why this matters, it helps to think about numbers. A single Israeli armored brigade, a large military unit made up of tanks, artillery, and support vehicles, uses about 180,000 liters of fuel every single day during active fighting. Multiply that across all of Israel's deployed forces, and the total daily fuel requirement runs into the millions of liters. Israeli frontline units typically carry enough fuel for only 3 to 5 days of fighting. That buffer exists to handle small delays in delivery. It is not designed to last if the entire supply system breaks down. The situation with ammunition is just as serious. One artillery battalion alone can fire hundreds of shells in a single day. Add up all the weapons Israel is using: tank shells, guided missiles, mortar rounds, bombs, and the daily consumption is enormous. Once soldiers use what they have and no new supplies arrive, they cannot fight. History has shown this many times. Napoleon lost his army in Russia in 1812, not because Russian soldiers defeated him in battle, but because his troops ran out of food and supplies in the brutal winter. The German army suffered the same fate on the Eastern Front in World War II. Iran's military planners appear to have studied these lessons very carefully. Iran's behavior in the 2026 conflict suggests it is not simply trying to cause damage with its missile attacks. It appears to be gathering information. According to data collected by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, Iran kept firing missiles at Israel over multiple days, even while Israel was bombing Iranian launch sites. Iran did not stop. It kept going at the same pace. This is significant because it shows patience, not panic. Each time Iran fired a missile, it was not just trying to destroy a target, it was also watching how Israel responded. How long did it take Israel's air defenses to react? Which targets caused the strongest response? Where were the gaps? Iran was building a detailed picture of Israel's weaknesses, step by step, attack by attack. This kind of careful, slow information gathering is the behavior of a military that believes it has time on its side. Israel has a serious geographic problem that makes it especially vulnerable to this kind of strategy. The country is small, roughly the size of the state of New Jersey, and it has only 3 major ports where military supplies can arrive by sea: Haifa in the north, Ashdod in the center, and Eilat in the south. These 3 ports are not just important, they are essential. Without them, Israel cannot receive the massive shipments of fuel, weapons, and equipment that a military needs to keep fighting. Iran's goal may not be to sink ships at sea. Instead, it may be targeting the equipment inside the ports that makes unloading possible: the large cranes that lift containers, the fuel pipelines, the railway connections, and the storage facilities. Destroy enough of those, and even a ship full of supplies becomes useless. It sits offshore while its cargo cannot be reached. The next step in such a campaign would be to attack the roads and bridges inside Israel that move supplies from the ports to the soldiers. Iran would not need to target every truck on every road. It would only need to destroy the key bridges and tunnels that every truck must pass through. In a small country like Israel, with a limited number of major roads running north-south and east-west, destroying several bridges at the same time would not just slow things down, it would stop them completely. When Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz after the United States and Israel struck Iranian targets in February 2026, it showed the world exactly this kind of thinking. Do not fight the army directly. Cut off the arteries that feed it. What Iran did at sea on a large scale it could potentially do inside Israel on a smaller but equally powerful scale. The most alarming part of Iran's apparent strategy involves Israel's hidden supply depots. Israel has a network of secret storage facilities spread across the country, filled with pre-positioned fuel, ammunition, and equipment for use when normal supply routes are disrupted. The locations of these facilities are among Israel's most closely guarded military secrets. Yet in recent months, Iranian missiles have struck facilities that were never publicly identified as military sites, and satellite images taken afterward showed ammunition bunkers, fuel tanks, and pre-positioned military equipment at those locations. This means Iran somehow learned where these secret sites are. That kind of intelligence does not happen by accident. It is the result of years of patient work, gathering information through human spies, electronic surveillance, and careful analysis of satellite images to build a complete map of Israel's hidden military infrastructure. One obvious answer to Israel's supply problem would be emergency airlifts from the United States. America has large military transport planes, the C-17 Globemaster and the C-5 Galaxy, that can fly huge amounts of cargo across the world very quickly. However, these planes need long, undamaged runways to land safely. During the 2026 conflict, Iranian strikes temporarily closed Israeli airspace and disrupted operations at Ben Gurion International Airport and other airfields. Iran knows that it does not need to completely destroy an airport to make it unusable. It only needs to create enough deep holes in the runway surface that heavy planes cannot land safely. If Iran does that at Israel's main airports simultaneously, American cargo planes, no matter how many are ready to fly, cannot deliver anything. Furthermore, even if some airlift were possible, it would not be enough. A single large cargo ship carries more supplies than dozens of military transport planes. No airlift program in the world can replace a closed seaport when an army of over 100,000 soldiers needs to be fed and supplied every day. It is important to be clear about why Israel finds it so difficult to solve these problems. It is not a question of courage or competence. Israel's military is highly skilled and well-trained. The problem is structural. Israel is a small country with a small number of ports and roads. Its military consumes supplies at a very high rate. Specialized port equipment, like large cranes, takes many months to manufacture and replace. Bridges take time and engineering resources to rebuild. These are not problems that determination alone can fix quickly. Iran, on the other hand, has a significant advantage in this type of campaign. As one Iranian official stated, Iran has enough missiles to strike Israel every day for 2 years without running out. Even if Israel intercepts many of those missiles, Iran does not need every missile to get through. It only needs enough to damage the key infrastructure, the cranes, the fuel lines, the bridges, so that the overall supply system collapses. As of May 15, 2026, Iran and the United States had not reached any agreement on nuclear matters, and the language from both sides was becoming harder and more threatening. It would be wrong to conclude from all of this that war is inevitable. Iran has the ability to execute this kind of campaign, but having the ability does not mean the decision has been made. Ceasefire talks mediated by Pakistan have continued, and both sides have returned to the table multiple times, even when negotiations stalled. There are people on all sides who understand how dangerous the situation is and are working to prevent it from getting worse. A conditional ceasefire declared on April 8th came after weeks of heavy fighting, and it did buy time. However, history teaches a difficult lesson. Military capabilities that are carefully prepared over many years tend eventually to be used. The option exists, it is tempting, and any future moment in which Iran decides that the cost of doing nothing is greater than the cost of acting could trigger the campaign described here. What this situation demands from governments and the public is honesty, not reassurance. Telling people that everything is under control when the evidence points to a serious and growing vulnerability is not leadership. It is a failure of responsibility. What is needed is an open acknowledgement that Israel's supply infrastructure represents a real strategic weakness, that Iran has spent years preparing to exploit it, and that the solution cannot be found only in better missile defense systems or more diplomatic meetings. The deeper lesson of this conflict, and of military history going back centuries, is simple. An army that cannot be supplied cannot fight. Fuel, food, and ammunition are not details. They are the foundation upon which everything else rests. The side that understands and acts on this truth will shape the outcome of the conflict. The side that ignores it will not.